Welcome. My name is Fabrizio Aiello. Thanks for tuning in. Today I'm going to be doing some inking. I actually have some reference up here. So normally what I've been doing recently is comic book work, but occasionally I just like to jump back into illustration, and it's kind of like a palette cleanser, really looking at photo reference, trying to mimic what I see. So I have a couple of photos here. So the first is, this is actually what I'm going to be using from. Now, if you look at this, it's not like a one-for-one. I just free-handed it. I didn't trace it or anything like that. And I changed some things. So if you look at, let's see. If you look at his left glove, I totally just drew something for that. And you can see there's, I'm not going photoreal here, but I'm just putting landmarks in, basic folds, the big ones, placement, proportion. I tweaked his hand here because that weird mitten thing just looks goofy on the photo. So yeah, I thought the imagery was pretty cool. It's kind of like a study. It's something to do for practice, honestly. You got to break out of that sometimes. So this is an example of something I've done in the past. And this is kind of what I'm going for. I used an old reference of a scuba diver, and I just did an ink illustration using the Micron pens. So that's kind of what I'm going for. Anyway, any questions? Let me know. I'll get rid of these things. Wrong one. Maybe I'll leave this this image up in the corner if anybody wants to pay attention. All right. So some music. How about Lo-Fi Nights, piano chords, 124 BPM? Wow, that is a very specific song title. Lo-Fi Nights, piano chords, 124 BPM. That wasn't generated by AI at all. So the first thing I want to do is just try to make sure that the drawing's right, and if there's any last minute adjustments I want to make to the drawing. Because once you start inking, not that it's too late, but it's pretty close. So for the most part, let's see. I like the pose, proportions look good. I fixed the weird wonky gloves on his side. I made his feet look a little more like feet than looks like bags. He is basically in a giant bag. That's what it looks like to me, at least, with his satchel that has whatever contraption for the gas mask, maybe filters. I don't know what that's for. It's not completely out of left field. We have Horace H. Hoover, who has, a hose coming from his mouth up to the top of his head. So there's a lot of weird imagery from World War I, II, any of that old stuff, scuba diving. You can find some pretty crazy imagery. Now, whether or not it's cool imagery is another matter. Let's see, Robert Roxby. Robert, how's it going? Ironically, been studying these past couple of weeks. That's funny. These kind of images. Yeah, there's so many cool ones. So hopefully I don't mess this one up. The one thing I do start with whenever I'm doing these pen and inks is the blackest blacks. It's the most... Let me get some light on this. Yeesh. It's the blackest blacks are really the easiest thing to get in quickly and then judge everything around it. You know, if you know that like the crease in this bag is going to be 100% black, it's easier to then build values on around that. So I always start with the blackest blacks. And I will be jumping around quite a bit. These micron pens are really ideal for this kind of pen and ink stuff. And again, this is not going to be like a one-to-one photo real drawing. It's just going to be, it's going to be based on it. It's going to be pretty close, but wherever I feel like changing it, I will. Nobody's gonna get mad. I don't know who is in this gas suit, and I'm sure their descendants aren't going to track me down on Twitter. Well, actually, World War I gas mask. That's so funny. Yeah, they're pretty fascinating. All sorts of different technology. And, you know, again, with Horace H. Hoover, a lot of different technology that looks like it would fit right in there. And not even as like as weird technology, not even as something you would expect to see. It just looks so weird to us in today's times. And the thing is, with these photos, one of the reasons I don't want to be too slavish is because these aren't high-res images. At least this one isn't high-res. So there's a lot of detail that you just gotta fudge a little bit. And the light on this image is not ideal because it's kind of all over the place. I mean, it's obviously it's sort of like global illumination. Maybe it's top right, you see on his shoulder there, but there's enough bounced light, especially with the snow, that there's not really like a really good one source of light for this. Oh, hey, Mike W. What type size micron do you prefer? I got some PN plastic nib ones to try out. I am not familiar with that. Yeah, the microns, I'll be honest, they're not my favorite, but they're easy to find, and I've just been using them for a long time. I kind of go through quite a few. For an illustration like this, I definitely want to go with the 005. Like 02, 03, 05 is probably the thickest I would go for an illustration like this. But I don't know what the plastic nib ones are. That's interesting. I mean, I do traditional sort of dip pen stuff too. But again, I feel like the subject matter for that's going to be very different. The other thing about this old weird technology is like, I don't know what this stuff is. So it forces you to think of the shapes instead of having a preconceived notion of something. Like, I can't really tell what this, I guess this bag here has a strap here, but man, it is hard to tell. So you just kind of go with your gut, fill it in. As long as you get the shapes right and the value right, it's going to look good. It's sort of like a general rule for art in general. Get the shapes right and get the value, and it'll look right. That's why with painting, you can have a purple and orange portrait, and it'll look beautiful as long as the proportions and the values are right. The relative values are right. Definitely prefer the G pen nibs and Winsor Newton brushes. I'm trying to learn to appreciate the microns. Yeah, I actually just recently got the G pen nibs. this is terrible, but I had finally found the type of nibs that Bernie Wrightson used for Frankenstein. They were actually pretty expensive, very expensive for one nib. I think they were $1 a nib or something like that. I finally found like a bulk set of them I could get. I'm like, you know what? These will last me a long time. I really just want to try these nibs. You know, if you get the same nibs as Bernie Wrightson, you're going to draw just like him. I think that's how that works. And I got the nibs in the mail, and I don't know what happened, but I couldn't get them to work. And I know sometimes they have like an oil coating, so you can usually clean them or sometimes burn them to get rid of that. I soaked them, scrubbed them, burnt them. I could not get this batch of nibs to work. So then I got the G nibs, the G-pin G nibs, and they worked right out of the box and worked so well. And they're really inexpensive. So I'm gonna not fake the lighting, but I'm gonna keep my light source top right, and it's gonna be substantially more than. Hold on, do I want top right, top left? This is where, you know, the actual pieces of the artwork dictate what's going to look better. So if I have the light from the left, we could get a really nice bright spot on the helmet, on the top of the gas mask, and then the top of the hose, which might be really cool. Maybe we'll do top left. Yep, top left. All right, so let me erase that. Wrightson nibs, that's so sick. Useless Wrightson nibs, super bummer. Yeah, that was the only thing keeping me from doing the next Frankenstein illustrations. All right, so now we got a little bit of the darkest darks going. And this is the easy stuff. I always start with usually the easy stuff because you're kind of warming up at that point. Just pick big shapes that you know that are going to be there. You kind of see their form and how they relate to the other pieces. And I don't want to call this phase like outlining because I never really outline. I always break my lines quite a bit because I really like these like lost edges. And obviously the lost edges will imply light or like a reflection, even if it doesn't entirely make sense for every scenario. I always break up my lines. If I need to go back and clean them up and actually connect them, I can always do that later. But when something is outlined, it immediately sort of pulls it into 2 dimensions. Yeah, so these really dark spots here, even at this stage, really help out. I don't know how far I'll get tonight on this. There's no way I can finish it, but Robert, what is Fabrizio drinking? Funny you should ask, Sir Robert. I am drinking coffee. This is Starbucks. I believe it's the fall blend, and it is the Keurig. For anybody else who doesn't realize that, that's sort of an inside joke. I had a podcast many, many years ago. It was sort of a spoof podcast called What is Fabrizio Drinking? And in my best sort of NPR voice with a little bit of light jazz in the background, I would spend, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds explaining what I was drinking, and then that would be the end of my podcast. It was pretty funny. Especially since it was in the early stages, whenever podcasts weren't quite so prevalent as they are today. I added a bunch of rings that aren't here, but I just kind of like that. Robert, I am put to shame. I mean, it is the evening, so sometimes you can get away with not your best coffee. The most difficult thing about this drawing is absolutely going to be the fact that this thing is entirely gray. So that's where I will be cheating, because it'll look dull and flat if I make it all gray like that. There's definitely some shades in there, but I'm really gonna stretch the values. So I'm going to be going to Baltimore Comic-Con. I keep talking about it because it's kind of a big deal for me. I've never been to Baltimore, and I've only really done one or two real smaller shows. And some of the guests are just, legends. Chris Claremont, Al Milgrom, Klaus Janson, Walt Simonson. I mean, the list goes on. So it's going to be fun, and it's going to be sort of nerve-wracking. I mean, I don't know if I'll get to run into Chris Claremont in the concession stand or not, but I'm not even sure what I would say. I have no idea, other than I've been reading your comics for 40 years. I'm also waiting for that first conversation I have with somebody, and if they ask me about Horace H. Hoover, I have to come up with something that doesn't sound quite so ludicrous. So do you leave the vacuum part until the end? Oh, he's an occult investigator. It's set in 1920s, 30s New York, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and by the way, do I say that for the end? Or do I start with that? I guess we'll find out. So all these, you can probably tell, I'm not really sticking too closely to the actual photo for folds and stuff like that. If there's a big one, I will, but I just know that, okay, in this particular area, there's some compression folds. In this area, there's a different kind of fold, et cetera, et cetera. Baltimore is also going to be my first con as a maker of comics. I'm terrified. Oh, I didn't know that you made a comic. I don't know. I must have missed that on Twitter. What's the name of the comic? And you have to give me your info so I can know what booth you're at. Why this versus brush pen? I mean, that's a good question. At least what I was thinking is I want to change things up. It's really just like a palette cleanser, like an artistic palette cleanser. And for me, this is so different than what I do for Horace H. Hoover that it forces me to do other things and think about the form in different ways and how I sort of carve out the 3D aspect of it. So it's kind of that. It's also, man, it would be really difficult to get like a photo real version of that with a brush pen. I'm not saying you can't do it or with a brush, but for me, I feel really comfortable with the brush, with a pen, doing this kind of illustration. The vacuum is the sizzle on that occult detective stick, in my opinion. Hit him with it last. That is good advice. I might take you up on that. Tales of the Extra Normal, booth 2105. Okay. I will try to remember that. If not, DM me or hit me up on Twitter. Yeah, we'll definitely catch up. You know, like these straps here are 100% in the photograph solid black, but I will still leave a little bit of a highlight where I think there might be something. I can always go back and completely make it black, but I'm assuming it's leather, so like this part here, you can see where I didn't quite line it up, where it does actually catch some light. You guys are making me want to come to Baltimore. It's going to be something. I think it's going to be pretty cool. I'm definitely excited. Okay, so I feel like I have a little bit of structure, so I can bounce around a little more. I want to make sure I don't go too far with one part of the drawing before I finish the other stuff. So I'll go down here to the glove. Now this glove is, well, it's 100% made up at this point, so I don't really have anything to reference. Although when I was in college, oh man, I wish I had him. I did a series of gloves. There were these leather kind of work gloves. And I did them with Micron. And man, I loved them. They turned out so nice. I mean, this dude is in a big bag, so I can put a million wrinkles and folds, and it's still not enough, really. That could get a little much for the eyeballs, but I guess we'll see. I always think of Travis Charest whenever I'm doing pen and ink work like this. If you guys are familiar with him, one of the most incredible artists, for my money, that's ever worked in comics. His stuff on Wildcats is really what I look to for inspiration whenever I'm doing really detailed stuff. And Richard Friend did the inks on it. And Richard Friend, who I've mentioned before, amazing artist and inker, is going to be coming out with Blaster Kid. Actually gave me art lessons through his Patreon, which really helped a lot. So I don't know why I did that. I should have stayed horizontal for that strap. Should always, not always, but almost always use the direction of the actual geometry. So I can make this black just because it's so close to that pack. Worst thing about these sort of illustrations is you can sink a lot of time into them, and it doesn't take a lot to mess them up. Because you really can't do whiteout on this kind of stuff. You can try, but it's hard to white out and then ink back on top of it. You can white things out, but going back in and doing hatching on white out, I've tried every kind of whiteout imaginable, and I've never had success. I think this is like a pocket or something on the left-hand side. But man, that's another thing. It's really hard to tell. Looks like a pocket. So if it has a little form, then I can do a little bit of a gray. Yeah, this is going to definitely take some time to ink. This will probably be, I don't know, at least several live streaming sessions. The other good thing about these microns that I really like, it's a flap. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I should have done a little bit of research. I like the photo. White gel pens work pretty well for small areas or little spots. I use those a lot. Yeah, I found a few things that work to cover, but doing this particular sort of hatching and cross hatching for me, it's really difficult to cover something up and have it not essentially come off as you start to draw into it again. With a brush, it's a little better just because it's not, has a softer edge and it lays on top. When I saw this image, I just kept on picturing Horace looking at him and being like, "You look weird." I just thought that was sort of a funny. He's like, "What's up with the mask?" I also thought it's really strange how the waist is so high on this. He looks like he just got back from Bob Evans. He's about to take his 11 a.m. nap. Midnight Mausoleum. How's it going? I saw that Rob was streaming at the same time. I was trying to get an East Coast, West Coast, old school rap beef going. I don't think it worked though. Even though he's not West Coast, but New York, PA, and yeah, I love this guy. He's so fun. I say that not knowing if he's about to murder a bunch of people, but you know what I'm saying. I love the outfit and the how the drawing's going. This is actually really nice. It really is a pleasant break from the brushwork of Horace H. Hoover. You just get to do some photo reference. Really fine detail. I really think that my style for Horace H. Hoover has evolved a little bit, not a ton, but it started out as sort of my idea of what my comic book style would be. Very different from my illustration style, and I could kind of see the two merging at a certain point, and I feel like that's where I'm at right now. It's got quite a bit of detail that I would use for illustrations, but it's still sort of in the comic world. So I think that's where my final style is sort of settled, but I guess we'll see. Even though this is a 005, I almost feel like it's a little too big for this drawing. But I gotta continue with it. Because if not, it'll take a detour and it'll look kind of weird if I switch right now. Like for certain things I can switch, but I've done quite a bit of the big stuff already. But when I get to that sort of tertiary level of detail, I can pull out a thinner pen. There's certain pieces of a drawing, as long as you get those right, the rest will sort of fall in line. And most of the time, it is just a few spots of really good shadow that look realistic and good highlights, a few folds. Like you don't have to nail every single fold. You get a couple of really good ones and the rest just become believable because of that. At least that's what I like to think. No, it's definitely true. Because I know when a drawing is going well or not. And there are times where I started a drawing and I just picked the right folds or the right shadow early on, and they worked so well that I'm like, okay, no matter what I do after this point, I'm good. I'm not there yet, but that is possible. And that's mostly going to be solid black, but I just wanted to put one level of gray in it for now. It has been 40 minutes and I am just starting this drawing. Wow. Yeah, this is why I don't do a lot of these kinds of illustrations. They just take so much time. I do love them. So I might do more. If anybody has any suggestions, recommendations, maybe fantasy, sci-fi, something different, just to stretch whenever I'm not working on Horace, let me know. So right underneath here, it's all black, but I just got to make sure that the transition is real soft, because that's essentially that'll dictate the texture, the material. Soft texture versus a hard texture. I'm sorry, transition. So this will definitely need some cross hatching. I try to avoid cross hatching as much as possible. That's why a lot of times I will actually start with all hatching and then layer the cross hatching as I get further in. I would love to see you do straight up sci-fi. Yeah. I'm trying to think of my favorite sci-fi. I mean, obviously Dune for me is my go-to for sci-fi, but I mean, there's some Ray Bradbury stuff. There's some Philip K. Dick stuff that I like. I don't know. Yeah, I should think about that. I started working on essentially just like a montage book cover illustration of Shadow over Innsmouth. And it's turning out really well, and it really got me thinking it'd be nice to do just a series of like movie poster illustration type things, the things that I really love. Let's see. I would love to see your take on Big Trouble in Little China. Oh man, or Dune, like from the book. Yeah, I'm a huge Dune fan. Huge. Big Trouble in Little China. Man, I haven't watched that in forever. I'll probably only be streaming for an hour. My phone's about to die. I call that battery hubris. You're like, yeah, my battery's fine. I don't need to charge it. I get battery hubris a lot. The one thing I really would like to do, which is very holiday specific, one of these days is to do, using the style of illustration, maybe, again, I hate to invoke Bernie Wrightson's name, is Christmas Carol. I always wanted to do these really nice, big illustrations of A Christmas Carol. It's one of my favorite stories. Or maybe something even a little more, there's more or less mainstream. Something like Crime and Punishment. Just take like an old classic lit book that I love, which is one of my favorite books too. And just do some illustrations from that. That might be pretty cool. The thing is, I don't look at this as wasted time, definitely. Even though I'm using different tools, it's different subject matter. Without a doubt, whenever I jump back to Horace H. Hoover, I'll feel at minimum refreshed. But you just learn everything. You learn something from everything. So we'll see what I learn at the end, but maybe it's a new way to do the hose. Maybe it's just something with the value in lighting or something. Thanks. That was a little unexpected. So there's the hatching, that's the initial value, and then I'll go back in and do the cross hatching to get it to the final value that I'm looking for. Now there's not going to be any white, except for I might do a tiny little like pure white highlight on the gas mask just to move that or to pop it forward, but we'll see. It's funny because whenever I went to college, all of my art teachers, they'd walk around the room while you were drawing. And they would tell you what you're doing wrong while they stood over your shoulder. And the one thing they just never did was draw in front of you. And I can't figure out why. I've always thought that was really vital to kind of show what you mean. Really how to approach a drawing and see it through to the end. But no, they just would not do it. And I don't know if it was, I'm not going to say lazy. I mean, these were good professors. I went to Edinburgh. These painting and drawing teachers were really good. So it's not that they weren't good. It's just that I don't know if being watched by other people. Obviously now it's very normal, but back in the day, it was less so. But they had no problem watching you, seeing every last little mistake that you made. Yeah, the hose that I do for Horace, it's changed a little bit. At first in my head, I really wanted to just like a black hose with like a few pops of white to show it's like a really hard plastic. But that changes sometimes, depending on if the background value. If there's too much black in the background, I don't want to do that for the hose, because then I'll just get lost. So I actually have to approach Horace's hose a few different ways. These are problems that Michelangelo did not have. Definitely didn't have these problems. I definitely can see like little comic booky things popping into my illustration stuff, which is interesting. There's this one thing in particular. I don't need to show it now, but kind of interesting. Captain Goodnight. Hope you and Geronimo can resolve your blood feud. I don't know. I think it's gone too far. Gone too far. Very much like Tupac and Biggie. We're just at opposite ends. And I don't think there's any way to get us back. Definitely taking liberties with this thing. But that's the fun part of being an artist. I can do that. You know, I should have looked at Travis Charet's stuff before I actually started this. He would have been perfect reference, but it is kind of funny how habits creep in and really change your stroke. That's what 100 pages of Horace H. Hoover will inevitably do. Yeah, we're almost at an hour. Yep, I'll stop at an hour. I still have a lot of stuff I need to do to get ready for the big show in Baltimore. My printer's on the fritz, which is so convenient right before you head out. But I'll make sure I I stream the rest of this drawing, inking, I should say. And I'll be streaming a little bit, I think, from the convention, unless it's really depressing. Then I will just pretend it didn't happen. Alrighty, let's see. It's looking pretty good. Yeah. Definitely have some structure down, have some value. I can kind of see how I'm going to finish the rest of the drawing. The only thing I haven't done at all was the feet. So I will do a little bit just so I have just something to go on next time instead of nothing at all. Now this is where I could really go crazy with the folds, what I wanted. think this suit would have looked so much cooler if the top was the way it was, and at the bottom he had some really cool boots. I think that would have been super slick. Captain Goodnight. Pete mentioned alternatives moving to individual title crowdfunding instead of multiple titles at once. Looking forward to the HHH campaign. Oh, I didn't realize that was announced. Yeah, so basically what we're going to do is it's single titles. So issues 3, 4, and 5 for Horace H. Hoover are going to be on its own campaign. So there'll be specialized merch. All of that is going to be geared towards Horace H. Hoover, which I'm excited about. I'm really excited about that. And even as a reader, I think it's going to be really cool to essentially get a packet in the mail, and it's all going to be Horace H. Hoover. Whether you get a trading card or a T-shirt, you get your stack of books, and then in a month or two, you're getting your Blood Realm box and all of that merch. I just think that's going to be a really fun reader experience as well. Mike W., I'll be a day one backer of the HHH campaign for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that, Mike. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out when that'll happen exactly, but definitely let everybody know as I'm working on the book. But I will be ramping up for a campaign sometime. So there is on this arm definitely that same sort of seam. Which really can go dark. But before I do that, I actually want to put in, I'm calling them the standard themes, but you want the regular shadows and form before you go in and just put black. Mainly because it's not going to be 100% black. So if you put like one extra level of the folds underneath that, it's just going to bring everything down, 3 degrees or whatever, 3 shades. So as tempting it is just to go black, you really want to go in and just do the regular folds first. And then go in and do the black. Which I don't think I'll do this time. I wonder if the other soldiers made fun of him for how high his pants were. I kind of feel like, even back then, I just don't know how you get away with it. All right, looks like we're at the hour mark. I'm going to call it for the day. Let's kind of go over. Made some progress. Definitely made progress. Got a lot of form going. Kind of hit the big spots. Left leg. Just got to flush out the right leg a bit more. But maybe three streams. Then I'll finish this. But in the meantime, if anybody has any recommendations or, like I said, movies, books, stories, characters that they would like to see, let me know. and I will try to work them in the rotation when I'm not doing Horace H. Hoover. I'm going to be doing these other illustrations. So thanks everybody for popping in. Robert, Mike, Midnight Museum, Captain Goodnight, and I will talk to you later. Thanks a lot.